The H2O Network, purveyors of passion, seeking to expand human consciousness from the deep depths of the universe of your soul.
Greetings, family, and welcome to the H2O Network. H2O seeks to explore and engage in truthful dialogue regarding human life, and water is the conduit. Water impacts every aspect of our existence, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. In today's connected world experience, access to information is almost limitless. Let us share our insight, broaden the spectrum of understanding so that we can move forward, enlightened, hopeful, and willing to participate in all human affairs. Welcome, family, again. This is the H2O Network, broadcasting live from New York City, and this is your host, Dia Nunez. I'd like to welcome everyone in the chat room, everyone on the phone lines, and to everyone who will be listening to this via the archives later on. Just to let you know that you can download this on iTunes if you go to the H2O Network profile page. On the front of the page under our shows, you have 4 icons. You have the heart, the share, the RSS feed, and the last button, which is the iTunes button. Make sure if you want to call in to 917-889-7207, 917-889-7207, and make sure you press 1 on your keypad so I know that you want to be heard. Family, I have to tell you that this evening I am quite excited. We have a legend on the line, and when I say legend, I mean legend. He has been teaching Astral Travel for 20-plus years, Robert Bruce from Australia. I always tell you, family, I always give resources as we talk about the fabric of consciousness. And I always tell you that there are certain things that one should have in their library. And one of his books, and many of his books, but one of his books especially because it's been around for eons, it is literally the Astral Travel Bible, literally. Everyone that I know who is studying astral travel in some way, nature, or form has this book in their library. Astral Dynamics, the complete book of out-of-body experiences. And he's also written many, many other books. Energy Work, The Secret of Healing and Spiritual Development. He has so much knowledge up under his belt. Expert beyond expert. Literally, I've had this man's book, Astral Dynamics, in my library for decades. It is a pleasure to have Robert on the telephone with us, and I'm going to open up his line. Welcome, Robert.
G'day, Dia. Hello.
Welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Very
can you
good.
Okay?
Thank you so much. Yes, I can hear you wonderfully, wonderfully. Welcome to the HO Network. I know that you are a very busy man. You are doing workshops, lecturing, you name it, you're doing it. And I just want to thank you so much for spending time with us this evening for the US of A and early morning in Australia with us today.
Oh, thank you. I absolutely love doing radio. It's my most fun thing to do, so this is a nice, it's a pleasure.
Oh, that rocks. We love radio, too, and we love you. I have read your book many, many times. And by the way, before we get started, a good friend of mine who is a fixture at the H-Show Network, Anthony Peake, told me to give his regards from England. He sends you lots of love. I know that you all are friends and deal in the area of consciousness, so he told me to tell you hello when I get on the air with you.
Oh, cool. Anthony's one of my favorite people. Yeah, very interesting author.
Indeed, and he says the same about you. Now, we're going to dive deep today because I have tons of questions. So, family, brace yourself because we're just going to dive deep in there this morning and this evening. Now, everyone knows who has read your books or knows anything about you. I've heard you say, and everyone knows that you traveled when you were very, very young. And I've also heard you say that your mother was able to astral travel. And number 3, I've heard you say that anyone can learn how to do this, gaining wisdom and knowledge and so on and so forth. Well, I have to ask you this question, Robert. One individual at 3 years old does not have the wisdom and knowledge to be able to do these things. So my question to you is, do you believe that this is a bloodline thing, that obviously you are bringing back to the physical plane? It's a reincarnation of information that you are bringing back to the physical plane so individuals can get the knowledge that you bring forth? Because it's quite dynamic, I must say.
Well, dear, first off, if you've read my book, you know me pretty well, because there's a part of me in that book, Astral Dynamics. And if your listeners would like to get a free copy of my first edition, Astral Dynamics, the book, go to astralbob.com and they can download a free copy just for signing up.
You hear that, people? Now, run there now.
Yeah, you get a free copy. You can download the PDF, which is an ebook, free charge. Yeah, and it's a complete book, illustrations, everything. It's about a 600-page book. It's quite a lot of reading there. The first edition. The second edition is out now, which is it's actually a completely different book. So you're better off having both of them, because I did a major rewrite and added a lot of new material. Now, when I first started, there's something that isn't in the book. I first started having astral projections. It was before I was 4 years of age. I was about 3, almost 4 probably. This is my best guess, because I didn't keep a diary and didn't have a PA then. I had a lot of experiences where I'd woken up paralyzed with vibrations. Now, these vibrations are not the normal type of vibrations you experience in relation to out-of-body experience, astral projection. I've had that thousands of times over my life, and there's a difference. This vibration was a very uncomfortable fizzy-type vibration. I could feel it in, like, my bone marrow of my arms and legs and back. It made me feel very uncomfortable, and, of course, I'd be paralyzed. Now, I had many experiences with that, and there would always be a bright light coming from above my head. And I'd be laying in my bed, and it would come from above my head and to my right-hand side, usually. Now, once, I was a brave little fellow, all of almost 4 years of age, I managed to turn around and look at the light. And I now know that I was paralyzed, and I was actually turning around inside my physical skin. I was moving my, you could say, my etheric body, or what Robert Monroe would call the second body, which gains some degree of movement. And I moved around, and obviously I had astral sight and hearing because I could see clearly. And I looked above my head on the right, where the light was coming from, and what I saw there was mind-blowing. There was a large ball of light about the size of a basketball, which was pulsing a very bright, cool light. And sitting beside that was a very large ET, an extraterrestrial. And this was one of the, it had the big triangular face with the big black eyes, and it had a body very much like a praying mantis, like an insect. Everything was sort of double-jointed, if you know what a praying mantis looks like. And it was sitting, and it was, controlling this light. And when I looked around at it, of course, I went, what the hell is this? In 4-year-old speak. And it looked at me and noticed I was awake, or it was turning around. This was obviously, it was an astral, real-time astral creation here, because I've noticed over the years that ETs use the astral quite extensively for their work, whatever it is they do. And it touched this ball of light and sort of tweaked it, and I went unconscious And that was all I remember about that. But it was vividly clear. And shortly after that experience, I mean, it might have been the next night, a week, a month later, I had my first out-of-body experience. And where I just started to buzz comfortably through my whole body, completely different sort of vibration. The astral projection ones are much more comfortable. And I just floated out of my body and started moving through the house feet first, as if I was still in bed. And that happened to me several times a night from then on. And I had thousands of OBEs. And in the process of doing that, I learned how to, become a bit more upright. I learned how to move around. I learned how to fly, and thoroughly explored the astral in my childhood years. But at the start of it, I can only think there was a relationship there. This ball of light and this ET was using was producing something very much like hemisync, which is the altered state-inducing sounds, binaural beats, which were invented by Robert Monroe and Thomas Campbell at the Monroe Institute. They call it hemisync. And when I first used hemisync at TMI a few years ago, I was introduced to it. As soon as I put the headset on and I felt the effects in my body, I knew it was something similar to what this ball of light was doing to me. So I can only say here that this ET altered me in some way, and altered me in some way to produce out-of-body astral projection ability that happened a lot, and other psychic abilities as well. Because as I evolved over my life, I've done things that other people cannot easily do, and it's just seems quite natural for me. So I think it altered me, and this is many years later you have me.
Indeed, and I just, listening to you talk to other people about your experience and reading about you, my perception of this reality is that, yes, we all can do the same things. In other words, we all come to the planet with the same spiritual software. Some people come here with it already enacted. Some people need tools from other individuals to enact that software. And I really perceive that the ones who come into this realm of reality already knowing and being able to do, they were sent here for a higher purpose, to be able to write, if you will, to disseminate that ancient knowledge, if you will, to individuals. And also, I thought it was fascinating that your mother, the maternal, the feminine energy, if you will, is able to do the same thing. And I would be very fascinated to know if your mother had that same experience as you do with the beings on the other side.
No, my mother did not have any experiences like that. She was my best buddy for many, many years, and she passed away about 2002, I think it was. But she had many astral projections, and she'd had them spontaneously over her life, but she also taught herself to induce them. And, had a lot of OBEs, but no connections like that. I mean, she had some experiences with ETs. I mean, my mother and I were physically abducted by ETs once while we were on a road trip. We lost 4 hours, and I remember a part of the abduction in the beginning and middle. I've recovered some of the memories of it. I mean, I remembered the beginning of it always, and so did Mum. But she never really wanted to talk about it, but she remembered it all of her life. And this was about, going back to probably 25 years ago when this happened. On a road trip, like heading home about midnight, and we were driving through a wooded area. It was a 35-minute drive. We left a friend's house we'd been visiting for the evening, 35-minute drive to come home, and about halfway home, going through a wooded area, and I'm driving this old Chevy, and I'm sitting on 55 miles an hour. Mum's chatting animatedly away, as we always were, and ahead, about probably 600 or 700 yards ahead, this brilliant light burst through the trees. I mean, it was stark, brilliant. It's like as bright as the sun, and you could see fingers of light coming through the trees onto the road. And you could see the light was moving because the fingers of light were moving. And my mother was like halfway across the car. I had my window down, and my foot came off the accelerator as we, approached it rapidly. And my head's out the window, and just as this huge ball of light, which was a spaceship, crested the top of these trees. And then a split second later, my hands are back on the wheel. My window is up. I'm doing exactly 55 miles an hour. The road is clear. My mother is sitting next to me with her hands in her lap, gazing straight ahead, quietly. My mother was never quiet. And it was like I'd just woken up, and I remembered it vividly, and I said, "Mum." And she said, "What, dear?" I said, "What do you think that was?" She said, "What?" I said, "That bright ball of light coming through the trees onto the road." And she said, "I don't know, dear," and went back to gazing straight ahead. It's like she had no interest in talking about it. And we got home, and I thought it was strange because the rest of the drive home, it was about another 10-minute drive home. My stomach was rumbling, and I thought, oh, it's unusual because we'd had a substantial meal at my friend's house a couple of hours earlier. And then we got home, and the night looked a little bit odd, and we got inside, and it was 4:30. There was like 4.5 hours missing, and my stomach was rumbling because I was hungry, because I hadn't eaten for several hours. We'd eaten about probably 10 o'clock that night. We had a late supper, and so obviously my stomach was hungry because it hadn't eaten for a while. But 4.5 hours missing. Now, over the years, of course, my mother always remembered that, and I'd occasionally bring it up and try and talk about it. But she was never particularly, never seemed really interested in talking about it and, debating it, discussing it. It's she'd remember it and say, "Yeah, I remember that," but it's like, and then she'd change the subject.
Wow. I'm sitting here listening to you, Robert, and if I ask you this next question, it will open up a can of worms that I'm not going to open now. We have to have you back so we can discuss this in further detail because I'm fascinated about your childhood in that experience and the whole astral travel and your gift thing, because I feel like that there's a connection, and I'm very fascinated, but I'm trying to bite my tongue so I don't go there. So we're going to have to do that another time because we will be talking for 6 hours. Because there's so many other questions that I have to ask you, but I'm dying to ask you others, but I won't go there. What is the biggest misconception about astral travel?
The biggest misconception about astral travel is that, there's a lot of them. The first one is that you actually leave your physical body when you have an astral projection, that you actually leave it empty. The empty body theory is incorrect. Up until my work appeared on the scene and my exhaustive, exploration of the astral phenomena, it was commonly believed, and all authors wrote about this, that when you had an astral projection or any kind of out-of-body experience, your physical body was left empty. That when you projected out of body, your mind, your soul, your memories, everything came with you, because it was a logical assumption of authors and explorers back then that how can you be in two places at once? So if you're out of your body, you must be all of you with you, that which raises the question, my physical body must be empty. Now that raises a lot of concerns, what if some spirit or another projector gets into my body and steals it or borrows it, or things could happen to me because it's empty. They call it an empty shell or an empty husk. But my work shows this does not happen. You never, ever leave your physical body while you still live. What you do during an astral projection is you generate an energy copy of yourself, which contains a fully thinking version of you. And that energy copy of you, like an energy reflection of you, is projected out of body. Now, you can, if you're inducing an astral projection, you are still awake in your physical body mind, albeit your body is in an altered state of consciousness, a deeply relaxed state. And you generate that automatically, and you do this every time you sleep. This happens every time you sleep. And that energy copy is projected out automatically. Now, you can be awake and functioning in your astral body when you have an astral projection in progress. Your physical body mind can also be awake and conscious and thinking at the same time. Your dream mind can also be awake and function. You could be having a lucid dream at the same time. Now, all three of you, or each of these three aspects, simultaneously can stand there and say, I think, therefore I am. They are each gaining experience memories independently. Now, after an astral projection, when you reintegrate, when these energy copies of you come back into the physical, your physical body must, of course, be awakening, in the process of waking up. I mean, you need to be in the sleep state or approaching the sleep state in order to produce the astral double, and you need to be reversing that. You need to be arousing in order to reintegrate. Now, when your multiple aspects of you come back into your physical body, of course, your physical body mind, your memory, has to handle 2 or 3 completely separate memory streams for the same time period, which is unnatural. It doesn't normally do this. Habitually, we remember what happens in the physical body-mind, in our normal physical life, and what happens to us, we remember. And occasionally we will remember a dream. But astral projections are rarely remembered. And in my research on this, most people will remember an astral projection when something wakes them up in the middle of it, usually, 10 or 20 minutes after they've fallen asleep and they start having an astral projection. The phone will ring, a car will go by, a truck will honk its horn, something will cause an arousal, which will allow them to recapture the memory. And there's often some fear involved with the memory because it's the unknown and it's, therefore it's scary. And that fear creates a powerful memory, which overwrites the physical body-mind memory or the dream memory, and it forms a solid memory in recallable levels of memory and consciousness. So you wake up and you remember the out-of-body experience. So as you can see from this, the secret of astral projection, and this is reflected in my book and in my training methods, is not in the technique. It's not so much about getting in the right state, a deeply relaxed state. Yeah, that's about 10% of the battle. And then the technique to get out of body, like climbing a rope or rolling over, various out-of-body exit techniques. That's another 10% of it. But 80% of the task is involved in actually remembering it. So you need a powerful memory, you need to keep it short, and you need a strong memory. So you need to do something before you deliberately re-enter the body. You need to psych yourself up and literally, passionately, savagely dive back into your body with this strong memory, like screaming, Geronimo, I did it, and you get back into your body and bang, you've got full memory. And then you have to write it down, because even though you remember it, it's like, how many times have you woken up with a vivid dream and you say, wow, what an amazing dream, I'll never forget that. Forget what? It's gone. Oh, no, it was a really good dream, and it comes back. Oh, I've got it back again, and then it's gone again. It's almost like a little cloud Like this dream memory, it's a little cloud that you wake up with, and then it drifts out of your head and you forget it, and then you try and pull it back, and you can pull it back sometimes, and you remember it again clearly. It just pops into your head again, and then it drifts away again. I mean, out-of-body experience memories behave very differently to a normal physical memory. They're very subtle and fickle. So as soon as you have a memory like that, you've got to verbalize it. You know, you've got to say something out of the experience. And I train people to dive back into their body, shouting a few key words, like my hands melted, because if you're having an astral projection and look at your hands, they'll melt rapidly. It's an unusual but reliable phenomenon. And so you jump back in saying, my hands melted, and then you immediately verbalize it. You say, hands melted, hands melted, hands melted, while you're reaching for a pen, because that couple of seconds it takes you to get that pen and paper in your hands, which should be laying beside you, can be enough to lose it. So you verbalize it and you write down what you were saying, hands melted, and a couple of key words. And then when you've got them down there, you can sit there and write down other details. Because if you don't do it in that way, you've got like a 99.9% chance of forgetting it, of losing the memory. And then you'll know something really cool happened, but you won't remember it.
Wow. Two questions. Well, we have a question that I'm going to ask, and then we're going to go to our chat room because people are blowing up the chat room. They're like, I've got questions. My question to you is, there's this mind split that happens when one leaves the body. Is the etheric body that is traveling in the astral plane a part of our spirit or soul? Because the way that I perceive soul and spirit are two completely different aspects. They are not the same perception, if you will. They're very different vehicles.
Okay. Now, defining the spirit and the soul as being different is very, very difficult. That is something that you can do intellectually based upon your thinking of astral projection. But in reality, in actually getting down to the nitty-gritty and actually doing it, it's kind of impossible to divide them. You can say you can do this intellectually, you could say according to beliefs, but if you actually get down to it through personal experience, it's very, very, I find it impossible to separate them because they're all a part of you. A human being is you, dear. You are not what you think you are. You are a collection of aspects, different aspects of personality and being, which this composite, this collective, functions as one unit. And we don't see this because we just normally see our thinking mind and our body and we know what we do, but we don't see these other aspects. We don't normally experience them. And it's very, very difficult. But the mind split effect, as I just described here, when you when you have an astral projection, it's very, very clear that as a mind split occurs, that you could say the master copy of you and your mind and memories, you could say your spirit and your soul as well, all stay in your physical body while you still live, and they never leave while you live, with the possible temporary exception of a near-death experience, which is exactly the same as an astral projection, only it's a lot more powerful because when your physical body dies, a lot more energy passes into the astral body. It makes it much more solid. And the more energy you could say, the energy of consciousness you have in your astral body, the more powerful that is. But that's a temporary thing, but it is exactly the same thing. It is an astral projection. So, and on that note, one of the reasons why astral projection is so great to experience, even if you only ever do it once or twice, is because you have personal knowledge, personal experience of existing independently separate from your physical body, like a spirit, because this is exactly what's going to happen to you when you physically die. You are going to have an astral projection, a very powerful one, and your physical body is going to die and fall to dust, and you will continue in the astral, but as a more powerful version of you, because you'll have all the energy from the physical body mind. So it's a much more powerful thing. And but I really don't think from experience that you can separate these aspects of spirit and the soul. Intellectually, based upon religious beliefs and things like that, you can separate them to try and make it fit. But on a personal level, personal experience level, I don't know any way of separating those.
Well, there's a personal reason why I asked that question, because I had an experience in the dream time where I was actually seeing my etheric body. And unfortunately, I couldn't see the person sitting next to me, but they were not obviously in human form. And they were breaking down certain things to me. And I was like, wow, that's very, very fascinating. So I thought I'd ask you that question, because they were talking about the infinite aspect of who we really are, not our physical being. So I just thought that what the individual sitting next to me was saying was very, very fascinating in nature. And I'm going to get to some questions in the chat room, because people are like, ask this question, ask this question. We have KT7 in the chat room. It says, I would love to know if he has some tips for people like me who tend to get started with the book and trying to project, but then they get discouraged and don't keep going. It sounds like a fear thing to me. Do you perceive that to be correct?
It can be. If you get discouraged and don't keep going, this is like manifestation or using affirmations. We human beings, all of us, we're essentially lazy beings. Most of us, we like to, play computer games, watch TV, and do things with our friends and see movies and that. But putting in an hour's work or more a day, let's say, which you really need to do to make serious progress in this area, is it's time consuming, and if you're not getting anywhere, you don't appear to be getting anywhere. It's easy to get discouraged, and you may, as you said, have some fear involved here. You get close to astral projection, and you'll feel some fear related, and the fear is a whole different ballgame. There's fear of separating from the body, a natural fear of dying, and there's a natural fear of dying, and there's also a fear of the unknown in general. But all of these things, in a nutshell, to help with the discouragement, it helps if you get together with a few other people and form a little club. Get yourself a couple of buddies, even one, and you approach this together. You both do the training together, and you could be in separate houses or across the other side of the world. But when you're working with a partner, it's like having a personal trainer. This is why personal trainers are so effective, because you've got the buddy there that's taking the lead. He's turning up and he's like, here's your smoothie for breakfast, and let's go for a jog and do the exercise and that. And you tend to encourage each other because you share each other's experiences and successes and failures, and you tend to make much better progress if you're in a group. Even if you get a couple of people together on the internet and and work out this together and both read the same books and do this and that. Yeah.
Indeed. And the person, KT7 says that they love that idea and that they don't necessarily feel fear. They just want to be able to feel different. But let me tell you something, KT7. Robert, as a matter of fact, today was talking about the symptoms of leaving your body. And I can attest, when you first experience these things, it can be fearful because you feel things, the vibration of like your heart, as you stated, Robert, pounding out what you think is your heart beating, pounding outside of your chest like you're going to have a heart attack is very scary. Or to like actually do a full separation and to look in a different direction and to actually see your physical body laying on the bed. It can be quite startling, to say the least. So it can be fearful when you start to feel that
definitely.
different.
It can be fearful. some people need different types of structure. The buddy system is great, but if you want the best, is one on astralbob.com. At the end of this month, we'll be releasing a video training package called Astral Projection Mastery, which I've been working very hard on. And there's a lot of free stuff, a lot of free videos on that there. So go along, get your free book, and and look at all the free videos on the video block there. Free training videos. I did another one yesterday on astral projection, exit symptoms, and that. But also I run an online workshop which is also video based called the Practical Astral Projection Intensive, which is just starting today. We're still taking bookings for it. So if you go to my website, astraldynamics.com, same title as my book, you'll see on the front page there an ad for that and a link where you can have a test drive of facilities and that. But it's a video-based course, but there's a lot of personal interaction through chat and forums and things, and so you get personal advice and coaching from me and my partners. So check out the Astral Dynamics and the practical, we call it PAPI, the Practical Astral Projection Intensive, because that suits some people as well if they need to work in a team. And that's a 5-week course, which is a really good length of time for working every day in learning how to astral project. Some people will just sit down, they'll read a couple of pages out of a book, and they'll just lay down or sit down there, and 10 minutes later they'll have an astral projection. It's like, but that's a rare percentage. That's like 1% of the population will do that. Most people, they have to work at it. They have to learn how to deeply relax their physical body. They've got to learn to relax their mind so they're not thinking all the time. Because thinking in words while you're making an astral projection attempt really throws a big wrench in the works of a very natural mechanism. The thought words, you need to push them away. Focus on your breathing, feeling your stomach rising and falling, and you can use that to relax, and you can say clear your mind of thought words, and then you'll find the astral projection will, even if you don't do any technique, just holding that state alone, which is just really relaxing and doing nothing, will induce an astral projection, just holding that state.
Indeed, indeed. And I'm going to jump forward a little bit, and then I'm going to jump back to the intricacies, if you will, of the astral plane, because I got a lot of questions. I've heard you say that at some point in time when one gets to the astral plane, you've been doing your thing, you've been hanging out, that one will have the capability of creating their own astral dimension. My question to you is, if that is the case, who is the architect of the other astral dimensions that are not able to alter them? Who's the architect? And how is it that we are capable to eventually be the architect of our own dimension?
Well, any person, if you are having a lucid dream or an out-of-body experience in the, you could say the astral planes, astral realms, you can usually alter your environment. Now, it's difficult to do that in the real time zone. Now, the real time zone is, you could call it the lowest level of the astral, but you could also call it the etheric plane. But it's my term for the area you find yourself in when you first get out of body. And it's in the physical world. You are like a ghost, a spirit in the real world. And so you're in reality as reality happens. So I call it the real time zone. That's difficult to create anything in there. If you focus on creating a bunch of flowers, for example, in your hand, you would look at your hand or just above it where the flowers are, and you'd imagine as intensely as you can a bunch of flowers there. And after a few seconds, a little, like a steam version, a little bit of smoke will appear there. And over a few more seconds, it will slowly condense into forming the bunch of flowers exactly as you imagine it to be. And then it will take shape, and you've got a bunch of flowers in your hand. Now, if you take your attention off of that, you find it will instantly start melting away. Now, that is because what you've done there, you've created a thought form. Now, if you spend more time creating that thought form of a bunch of flowers or a tool or a sword or something, you'll find it will last longer. It'll be more durable. And you put more and more time into that, even when you're awake, creating that, and you will find when you get out of your body, you'll find this bunch of flowers floating there. Because, thought forms tend to be more enduring depending on the amount of energy and time you put into them. It's like you're adding some, magical substance to it with your concentration and your attention. Your creative juices flow into them and they endure. Now, when you go into the astral planes and realms there, the astral plane scenario, which are like the pages in a book and their surface skins, if you look at the back page of my book, Astral Dynamics, you will see an artist's depiction of one of the astral plane's surface skins, an infinite space of blue with grid lines and these golden lotus flowers with like a jewel in the center, which is an artist's depiction of I think it's the fifth astral plane. Now, but when you get inside the astral realms here, you can create some things here it depends a lot on the solidity of the realm. If it's really, really solid, you'll find you can create little things like a bunch of flowers and stuff like that, but you find it difficult to affect the whole landscape. But if you get into, you could say, less fixed or more refined astral planes, then you have more scope with creating. You can create a mountain range, anything like with just a single thought. You can sort of craft it. The landscape, we call it dreamscaping, and that also applies in lucid dreams as well, where you have even more control over, dreamscaping the environment. But the amount of creative power you've got seems to vary. I don't really know why. I can only speculate on that depending on what level of the astral you're in. But as for the architect of the astral planes, I would have to say all of us, you could say source, all of the minds in the universe contribute to the astral planes. But the astral plane layout of you could say like the pages in a book, the 7 astral planes, that seems to be fixed. And if you look at an astral plane and how they're laid out with their grid lines and the patterns on each of the astral planes, and where you penetrate that pattern will take you to a different area inside of that. And on each of the grids of an infinite astral plane, the same pattern is repeated endlessly. And this is very much like a database, a digital database, a mathematical database, where you have grid lines. And, if you look at a database and mathematically how it's formed, and you look at the astral planes, there is a similarity there.
Indeed, absolutely. And I don't know if you know who Robert Wagner is. We had him on the HO network, yep. Avid lucid dreamer. Love him. And he brought something to my, yes, brilliant guy, just like you. He brought something to my attention, and I was like, wow, that's really profound. I never noticed that before, but now I noticed it. The basic foundation of the place that you're in cannot be altered, but one can create objects, if you will. And that's why I asked you, who is and I'm probably asking the $1 million question, who is the architect of the crust, if you will, the basic foundation that never changes, because it doesn't. And when he brought that to my attention, I was like, wow, that's really deep. I didn't really notice that before. I mean, it's like this conundrum, if you will. One can create, but it's a paradox because one cannot really create, because you cannot create the environment, if you will, that one is standing in. Maybe I'm wrong, but in lucid dreaming, I've noticed that about the environment.
Well, the best explanation for that I have got from my discussions with Thomas Campbell, who is the author of My Big Toe. And if you Google that, my big toe, which means my toe means fear of everything. And he's written a wonderful book called My Big Toe, and he's an absolute gentleman. I've done a couple of interviews with him, which we have on astralbob.com, by the way. If you his explanation was very, very similar to an explanation that had been growing in me over many, many years. I keep looking at the universe with all the projection and lucid dreaming and the explorations that I've done. And my impression of this, the universe we live in, it is like a gigantic computer operating system. It is like this huge, it's like a huge computer, the universe. And the parts of the universe here, it is like you have these programs. I mean, I am like an intelligent, a conscious living game sprite in this reality game being produced by this gigantic operating system. And you could say the source is the programmer, which is, it programs itself. The entire computer is sentient, it's conscious. And but because everywhere you go in this, like the Hall of Learning, for example, the initiation process that you go through in the astral, these are things which are triggered. I mean, if certain things that you do in the astral, when you start getting out of your body, you'll find there are initiations of overcoming fear. You get all these things happening, like, you'll feel things tugging at your feet, and you'll get out of body, and you might find these scary beings there, which are sort of breathing heavily and growling at you, and they look like chimpanzees, sort of ugly chimpanzees. And they're growling at you and sneering at you and plucking at you, with their hands. And they go, and that's all they do. They don't do anything else. It's like, be scared of me, otherwise I'll say, boo, again. And it's like, they're very, very common. Now, the correct way to deal with these beings is to, just tell them to go away in any way, shape or form you like, and just turn around and ignore them. Then there's another one called the Dwolla on the Threshold, similar to this, where you get out of your body, and this usually happens to people who have begun projecting frequently, and you get out of your body and you see this dark black figure across the other side of the room. It's like somebody's wearing a full wetsuit, including face, and it's got burning red eyes, and a dark figure, about the size of a grown man, and it's like breathing heavily and growling. It's going, and burning red eyes looking at you, and it looks really scary. But that's all it does. If you back off and move away from it, it'll follow you and keep going. It's like, I'm going to get you sort of thing. But that's all it does. It doesn't do anything else. It is just scary. And again, the way to handle that is to tell it to go away, turn around, like say, I don't believe in you, and turn around and go away, and it won't come back. These are like initiations. They're programs which have been triggered. This is one of the initiation programs. You trigger that by projecting frequently or having a certain level of consciousness and energy in your projected double, and that triggers these programs. Because if you look at it, and my wide experience in this area, if you cannot control yourself and control your fear, you should not be consciously projecting, because it's, really bad for you. But you need to be able to control yourself. So you prove that to the gigantic universal computer system by ignoring it, telling it to go away, making a statement, I don't believe in that, go away, and then go on your way. And, some courage can be required if you're a bit scared. I mean, the true definition of courage is not to have no fear. I mean, you're facing a situation like that, you're going to have a bit of fear inside of you. It's like if you're dealing with a savage dog. You're going to have a bit of fear in you, but you're going to be the boss, and you're going to tough it out, and you're going to make this happen and take control of the situation. I mean, the true definition of courage is to control yourself and still be able to function even though you have fear in you. So there's lots of these are like initiations. You pass one of these, and you prove to the Universal Consciousness Program that you are confident to continue astral projecting at higher levels, and you can go further afield. And then at other times you will, trigger other, you could say, programs, including some really big initiation-type programs, which I've experienced many of. And, many people I work with do. And there's similarities there. When you get to these certain levels of consciousness and energy and certain, types of astral projections, you trigger these programs. And they don't appear to end. This also applies to, like, clairvoyance when you're training for that as well. There's crossovers between all psychic abilities and astral projection. Everything is connected. In the early days of when you're becoming clairvoyant, you start triggering programs, and you'll start seeing random images and that, appearing for like half a second or 1 second at a time. You'll see a bicycle, you'll see a tree, you'll see a rose bush, you'll see a man wearing glasses, you'll see a motorcycle, you'll see a motor car. And, this could happen for years until you get it. And when you get it, what it means is this is a program that's running. This is the clairvoyance program, training program. And what's happening here, the correct response to this program is to, when you see a bicycle, say a bicycle. When you see a bunch of flowers, you see a bunch of flowers. I see a rose bush. I see a man wearing glasses. I see a green motor car. You respond to it and give information. And it's almost like you could say the source where this energy of clairvoyance is coming from is like, it's like tuning into you. It's like, it's meshing with you. It's like balancing itself with you so the communication is smoother if you successfully go through this program. And there's other programs like they never end. There's never a point where you'll get to in life where these programs end. Even in the afterlife, you travel into the afterlife realms like I do, and you'll see these programs running everywhere. And it never ends. It's just an integral part of life. It is like, you could say this entire consciousness, this universe we have, is built to train us. It's a gigantic training program simulation, which we call the universe.
Well, it seems to me like you're saying, and I've had this conversation with Robert and others, that you literally are confronted. The initiation is being confronted with your shadow self, if you will, and it presents itself in a form that is quite frightening. And until one conquers it, confronting it, if you will, is when one is granted the initiation to go to the next step. Is that what you're saying, Robert?
No, I wasn't intimating that at all. But what you're saying is true. That is another level of initiation. Confronting your shadow self is, you can say, a more advanced spiritual process which can occur in the astral as well, where you confront your shadow self. And you have to understand your shadow self, and you have to kind of process it. I wasn't talking about that at all, although it does relate to that, definitely. But the little beings that look like chimpanzees, they used to call them the old Christian spiritualists used to call them elementals, beings, although that's probably not a very descriptive term for them. But the description of these is very, very similar. If you read, books on these, I've talked to thousands of people about this, and these little beings appear and they look the same and behave the same for everybody. And it's like it comes down to this. It's like the Dwolla on the threshold. The similarities are striking. And the behaviour is the same. It's like that's why I say they are experiencing some kind of program initiation type thing they're experiencing. Because when you confront it properly, it never comes back. It's like you pass that level and then you move on. But I would call this confronting the shadow self and dealing with that a different kettle of fish. It's quite a very deep spiritual thing to do.
Indeed, it reminds me, what you were talking about, the beings, it reminds me of Rick Strasberg, I believe that's his last name, who did the DMT experiments in the 90s, Terrence McKenna, anyone who goes into an alternate reality and they talk about these beings, which could be an aspect of oneself, shadow self that one needs to confront, or, like you just said, beings that are in that realm that once you deal with them or you do whatever, you pass that initiation. It could be an infinite variable of things. But I find that very, very fascinating. These are very spiritual things that we're dealing with. And I always tell people, all of these things may sound fun and things of this nature, but one has to make sure that one does the work. Because these are not tools to play with. We all have them, but they have to be taken quite seriously. I don't take anything lightly, especially when it comes to the spiritual aspect of life.
Oh, yeah, you've got to take it seriously. A good example of what you're talking about there, and these programs never end, is you find a lot of people have repeated dreams. For example, over many, many years, I had a repeated dream and where I was chased by a bear. And if you're looking at the scenarios, these, hundreds of dreams I had where I was chased by this giant grizzly bear. It looked almost like I was, experiencing different lives. I remember in one of them I was I was a short French Canadian with a musket and a coonskin cap, and this giant grizzly bear was chasing me. But through the period of this, by having hundreds of experiences like this, and my mother had the same thing with the bear, many, many experiences with it, through the process of the bear chasing you in your dream state, you start to become conscious in your dream state, and to the point where you start to get it, just like you get the other programs. I've got to confront this. I've got to respond to this program in this way. And you get this intuitive download that tells you when you are conscious enough how to handle this test. And with the bear, I finally became fully lucid in the dream state, very powerful dream state it was. And then I created this big bunch of weapons. I had heavy machine guns, I had RPGs, you name it, shotguns. And I had this war with this bear. And right at the end, I was completely out of ammunition. I was down to my shotgun. And the last couple of rounds of the shotgun, the bear finally, it was like 14 foot tall, collapsed in front of me and died. And I'm fully conscious, fully lucid. I said, I finally killed it. It's over. And, breathed a sigh of relief. And then the bear morphed into a T-Rex dinosaur. And I thought, what part of fair is this? This is not fair. And then I'm running and I'm looking for a cave, and there's T-Rex chasing me. And I found this slit in the rock about, 18 inches wide. I could just fit through, and like a little slit in this hill. And I went into there thinking it can't change me. But it narrowed its head and it elongated its neck like Rubber Man. And the head followed me through this crack into the inner caves. And there I am, the shotgun on the floor, the T-Rex head in front of me, and I'm standing the other side. And it's looking at me, looking down the shotgun. Come on. And, of course, the lesson there was, you're partly conscious, you're creating weapons, you're still behaving like this is real. The correct response here is to actually walk up to it and say, you're not real. I don't believe in you. Or give it a hug or something. It's not real. Ignore it and turn your back on it. And that is that's the highest response, to say, I don't believe in you. You don't exist. This is a dream state. And, of course, you learn and you evolve, and that takes you up to a whole new level of dreaming.
Absolutely. Because the more you fear it, the more that it invokes itself. It's like this interesting paradox when you compare the tangible reality, if you will, and the astral dream time and all of these other realms. The same universal rules apply. The power of the mind and what we give our attention to is very much invoked, and even more so in these dream planes, if you will. So the more that you are an alchemist, if you will, when it comes to your consciousness and the control of emotion. That's the key word, emotion. you will be quite masterful. Do you agree, Robert?
Absolutely. And control here, very, very important. Now, if you get into the dream state and you become lucid in the dreams, it's also when you get into the astral, real time or whatever, if you do not control your emotions and your urges and your instincts, if you get into the astral thing or into a lucid dream and it's like, yeah, this is my realm, I'm like godlike here. And if you start, for example, if you're in an astral realm and you start having sex with